Matt Slikis bought a brand from me, sort of. Actually, it was after I left 400, but he bought Modern Fuel, one of my favorite brands that I got to work on, brand that makes really high quality, really beautiful writing implements, pens, pencils, etc. I have a titanium bolt action pen that I got from Modern Fuel when I was running it. It's a really cool company, early seven figures, and Matt bought the business in 2022 after 4x400, the aggregator that I was working with, was getting rid of some of their brands. So if you know anything about my story, you know that I was working on an aggregator. There were a bunch of brands in our portfolio, etc. And Modern Fuel is one of them. Really, really cool brand that I've always loved. Matt bought the brand, and we're checking in with him now. I actually love Matt's story. He's running Modern Fuel as a side gig, and I'll let him explain that more. But it's an early seven-figure brand. It's profitable. And I think Matt's story represents a fascinating way to think about the place and the way that an e-commerce brand can develop and can produce value in your life outside of the monster crazy nine-figure stories that you've heard about. So I'm going to talk to Matt all about what it's like to run this brand, what he's seeing working, how he's thinking about how it produces value in his life, as well as anything else that we get into about making beautiful pens. You can see in the background CNC machines. I think I can see them in the background. Yep, there you go, right there.
That's one.
All right, cool.
Over there.
So yeah. So you can see them there. He's literally CNCing pens himself. Let's get into it with Matt Slikis from Modern Fuel. Hello, Matt.
Hey, afternoon. How are you?
Good. I am so glad to be doing this. You and I have been talking for a long time, ever since you bought the brand, really. And you're in your shop. It looks like and kind of the full thing. So pointed out you've actually got CNC machines. I just pointed out in the intro. But, tell people what that is if they don't know. Yeah.
Yep. So this is our shop, and to give a little bit of context, when I bought the brand, we operated out of my garage for about 6 months. It became very clear, like, okay, this has a little bit more to it than what I originally thought, and so we moved into a space. We've since moved again. We're still in a small shop, like it's probably 1,300 square feet. I've got a Swiss CNC lathe right here, kind of over my shoulder. You can see it. You can't see it, but on the other side of that wall there is a 3-axis mill, CNC mill. And so these are, fairly expensive, robust pieces of equipment that you can make all kinds of stuff on. And, these machines were a part of the brand before I got it. Not these particular machines, but these were being made. These pens were being made by other people. And just in the last year or so, we've actually insourced this. And so now we're doing it here, which is a super fun project, super cool aspect for me to get into. But yeah, this is our shop. Like, this is where it's all done.
And that's one of the things that makes this a unique thing. Like, you are not outsourcing everything to a manufacturer from day one, call up a supplier, get them to send you some product and then ship it, right? Like that's one of the big differences with what you're doing versus what so many brands are doing. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been, it's sort of been an evolutionary process, I guess, from the time I got the brand. So when 4x400 had it, everything was being outsourced to a lot of domestic shops, but then some, components come from overseas. When I took over, I kept a lot of those same shops involved with making the stuff, but I noticed over time that I really didn't have control over the quality. Like, we could design a great product, but if something went wrong or just went off from what we expected during production, we ended up with hundreds or sometimes thousands of components that were essentially paperweights, and that gets expensive very, very quickly. And so I learned early on, like, okay, if I am going to make it in this business, I cannot just continue to pour money into working capital and, keep growing the balance sheet of more and more things. You've also got dynamics of, demand changes seasonally, and there's an ad might hit and it's like, this pen is crushing it, whereas, I have way too much of this and way too little of this. And so I saw pretty early on that if we could bring production closer to us, it would be a real strategic advantage for us in the space. It eliminates a lot of the risk associated with tariffs and, a lot of supply chain things. And it also just lowers the cost of holding the stuff. So that's kind of been the journey we've been on. It started with just a couple months after getting the brand. I went from having them finished, outsource the finishing, to completely doing the finishing ourselves, buying a little bit of capital equipment related to that, in order to, I just basically saw where the margin stack up was and said, okay, I can go after that and gain, $5 per pen by buying this one piece of equipment. Well, that payback period is, a couple of months or something. And so just kept like iterating down that. And before you know it, like you're learning CNC machining in your shop on these big machines. And so not really a journey I had set out on when I bought it, but here we are.
Pretty cool. I mean, it's one of the things that's distinct about you is that you have a much larger CapEx investment than as a percentage of your revenue, I think probably than many brands in our space. And so tell people, I think I floated in the intro early seven figures, but you want to tell people a little bit more about sort of the current state of the business because it's interesting to think about sort of the financial investment when you're literally manufacturing in-house. I mean, in room you're standing in. That's what I say in-house.
Totally.
Yeah. So give people a sense of sort of where the business is at and how you have thought about investing capital into that process. And then in a little bit, I actually want to ask you about learning to CNC the pens yourself because that's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're very early. I mean, when I say early seven figures, like we're basically as early as you can get in seven figures, which, is on the one hand, like that's fantastic. It's a very niche market. I could not be happier with that. On the other hand, like, would this be easier if we were mid seven figures? I think so. And what it comes down to is, we just end up doing a lot of things in house that I can't pay for in order to keep the brand profitable, I guess. And we do have a lot of CapEx, and that's one of the things that I've done as we've gone along. So I'm actually doing this as a side job. I have my main job, and that allows me to not have to take a lot of capital out of the business. And I've been able to say, okay, I have X amount of dollars. If I go and invest in this machine, what's my return look like on that? And, of course, I could always go to the stock market and I could do, in many ways, like probably better. If, I always joke, if I would have just put the money from this business into Meta or Nvidia or something, it would have been a lot better. But, I have to look at this, like, what do I think is the next best use of that dollar? And sometimes that's going and getting more inventory or producing, developing a product, which is, people don't realize if you're paying a designer to, even if you have a great idea and you get it, 80% of the way there, if you have somebody else involved in getting it over the finish line, like all that stuff is very, very expensive between the design and the prototyping and figuring out the manufacturing and all of that. And I saw machining in-house as a way to, yes, capture some margin, but also increase our flexibility, decrease the time it takes for us to launch something new. And in something like this, where there's really no, we design these things, unfortunately, for me, to last an entire lifetime. And so, I can't go sell somebody another pen the next week, or maybe I can sell them a few, but eventually they stop buying. And so, new products are the way to get that LTV to the extent that it's possible. It's still not the greatest model, but yeah, that's kind of how we got here, is a lot of CapEx but it's been very calculated in the way I've done it. Like, I didn't just go out and buy a machine and hope the revenue came along. It was like, okay, I've already got these consistent sales. I know what my ad costs are. I know all this other stuff. And right now I'm paying for the machining companies, building and machines and profit margin. Is there a way that I can do that makes sense for us? And
yeah, I
mean, here we are.
If you are a growing e-commerce business, you should build your team with help from my friends at More Staffing. More Staffing is a staffing agency that connects you to the best Filipino talent across your e-commerce business. And they do that because they were birthed out of US-based e-commerce businesses that were hiring Filipino talent. So they know what they are looking for. And on top of that, they go way deeper than just sending out a job description and getting you some resumes and getting you some interviews and that sort of thing. More Staffing is actually building a whole system for how to help you forecast and get on top of and think about the OpEx in your business. So you have a real plan for how to build your e-commerce business with an efficient OpEx so that you can be lean and profitable even as you scale, while also adding incredible talent, because your money goes so far to get great talent in the Philippines, people with deep e-commerce resumes across every single part of your business. On top of that, More Staffing will actually even help you implement workflows to help you think about how best to utilize talent as you grow. Most of us did not get into the e-commerce world because we were amazing managers. Managing growing teams is really hard, and it's only a little bit trickier if you do that overseas, but More Staffing has shepherded people through that process a whole bunch of times and can help you with all of it. They even have a way to help you think about where AI can get into your business to help you build more automations and other more workflow help so that you can do this. The point is, they're a real partner in helping you think about the totality of your personnel in your business, your OpEx in your business, so you can do the thing that I always talk about, which is grow your e-commerce business with a very low percentage of your revenue going to OpEx, while at the same time not killing yourself because you're running so lean. Get on a call with More Staffing, see if they can help you. They have a 1-year guarantee on any talent they place in your business. So if they place talent in your business and they do not work out for a year, they will refund you the money, or excuse me, they will not refund you. They will help you find a replacement for that person for at no additional cost. So morestaffing.co/AF, morestaffing.co/AF. Get on a call and see what's available for you. I'm a huge fan. I'm building my businesses with their help. I'm sending out job descriptions literally today for more positions to be filled by More Staffing, and you should do the same thing. morestaffing.co/AF. Check the show notes for the link. There's something I think about your business that when you describe it that way, it sounds both like an incredible grind and really cash intensive, and also like kind of the dream for people who are e-commerce people, where it's like so much of the fun of e-commerce is making an actual product and sending it to people. And so when you get that close to the work, I mean, it does sound like a grind, but it's also, there's like craftsmanship to it. And there's an element of like blood, sweat, and tears that you pour into it that I think is really satisfying. And you have produced, as I understand it, meaningful SDE at this point in the business. Now, I know that SDE does not equal cash, but even at the low 7-figure number, right, you're running it profitably. And SDE, for people who don't know, right, seller discretionary earnings, used often to value businesses before you would use EBITDA, because like in a situation like yours, it would be sort of a mix of the salary you pay yourself as a single owner of the business plus the profit all rolled into one number. That would be SDE, seller discretionary earnings. And so as I understand it, you know, again, not that you're taking a lot of money out of the business, but you are on paper at least producing some SDE. And I think again, you have a distinct thing here, which is, it's not that you're growing at some crazy rate and that therefore you have to plow the money back into the business for inventory per se, but you have CapEx. And again, just most brands at your size don't have that. They have suppliers, not CapEx, you know? So can you talk a little bit about that breakdown a little bit more, sort of SDE as a percentage now, anything you want to say about that to give people a sense of it? And is there a day when you can actually take money out of the business for yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I hope so.
Yeah.
So when I got the business, you know, the one of the things that made it a great acquisition target for 4x400 was that the margins were pretty good. You know, I want to say they were in the 65 to 70% range or so. A lot of that was to get, and when I say margin, I say gross margin. You know, I'm talking, what does it cost for me to get the product to the customer, net of shipping costs, net of payment processing fees, net of the cost of goods sold, et cetera, as a percentage
really fast,
of revenue.
Matt, I want to pause on that and just say, and we call that cost of delivery a lot of times on my show if people listen to it for a while, but I want to say 65 to 70 points on like $200 to $300 pens. So just for people to realize, like, you see a $200 pen and you're like, oh, come on, that has to be insane margins. And the answer is they're good, but they're actually not. I mean, I've seen much higher margin products in e-com. So it is actually, and these things are really engineered amazingly and beautifully. So anyway, yeah, keep going.
Yeah, no, that's a great call out. And you know, we don't have 100% yield rate either, right? Like if somebody pays for engraving and we go and we misspell it, like that's an expensive mistake right there. And so obviously there's processes that we do to try to get around that. But but at the end of the day, like we're buying titanium, we're buying zirconium, like we're buying metals that cost real money, and we're using heavy, expensive equipment to machine them down. Like there's no way to like make it super, super cheap. But the margins were fine when I got it. What I didn't love was the volume and the cost of ads to, you know, get that sale. And so I was able to kind of like knock down the supply chain a little bit. insource some of the finish work and assembly and that type of thing, change the designs a little bit to make them a little bit more cost effective, and then changing some suppliers around in order to, one, I lowered the price by like, I don't know, 30, 40% or something, which is, everybody says not to do most of the time in D2C. They say like raise the price, if anything. But I lowered it and captured a little bit extra volume, I think, that way, and was able to keep the margin about the same. Now, after investing in CapEx, I've probably increased the margin by about 15% or so. I'm still selling through some of our older inventory, so I'm not maybe quite to that number if you looked at my financials right now. But I think if we fast forward a year, that's probably where the margin lands. And I'm trying to structure it in a way that I can, if we come out with new products, I'm not just increasing the amount of working capital I need because, a lot of times people want to add products to figure out what hits and what's going to have that product market fit. And every time you add a product, you're just expanding the amount of inventory you have to have sitting on the shelves,
Yep.
which is not making money. And so, using some of that CapEx makes us more flexible that way. My goal is to decrease the working capital over time, increase the margin. And as a result, 2 years from now, I'm hoping, once I'm full time with this, that I can take a steady paycheck and, be very comfortable. We're even still like with the margins that we're at, we're probably, somewhere in the 20 to 25% SDE range, I think.
That's awesome. Yeah.
In the trailing 12. Yeah. Like I'm thrilled with that, right? Like those are not blockbuster numbers, but it's also like, it's, like you said, it's a dream for me. Like I step in the door and it's a time warp in this shop. Like I can work 12 hours and not realize anything's gone by.
Because you're enjoying it.
Because I love it. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I just think, and I think, like, when I hear that too, assuming you don't need to go buy a bunch more machines anytime super soon, which might be a wrong assumption.
I think it's a fair assumption. People always joke that like when you get these machines, they tend to multiply.
Yeah, right.
And we're always very like optimistic in e-commerce. Like I think we wouldn't be doing this if we weren't optimistic.
Yeah.
So like month to date on a year-over-year basis, like we're up 40 something percent. And so
Amazing.
If that trend continued, I'd be probably needing to add capacity very quickly.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you'll be able to take probably some cash out of the business, but not tons still, right? Yeah.
Well, and what's great about that is like if you look at traditional e-commerce financing, not that like I'm not always a huge fan of financing, but in the name of growth, like it can be very, very difficult and sometimes predatory to get decent terms or to get financing for inventory and that kind of thing. And it's quite different in the machine tool sales environment where they will give you good terms. And, so it's a way to like finance growth that's very different from any other e-commerce business, I think, in the sense that like, if I want to go pay cash, I can, and there's always a down payment and that kind of thing. But it also might make sense just to finance it. And it's a good way to fund growth in kind of an atypical way.
Yeah. Is that tell me about what your goals for growth are actually, because this is another thing I'm curious about with the way you're looking at this, with how hands-on it is for you now. How much do you want to grow it, and actually maybe even more interesting to me is how fast do you want to grow? Like, what do you see the long term of Modern Fuel at? Because this is another pathway to taking cash out of the business and that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. When I originally looked back at acquiring it, I actually looked at it in a sense of I wanted a business that I can involve my kids in. I have 6 kids. And, I wanted something that they could come into the shop, they could help me with it. We could put their hands on it, see, what we're doing to sell pens and that kind of thing. And so, long term, I would love it if one or more of my kids came and wanted to just kind of work alongside me. They do some stuff now, to the extent that they're able when they get fired up about buying something or whatever, they'll put in the hours. But, for me, I am not looking to sell the business. Like I'm not looking for an exit in that form. Like I want to produce steady, meaningful income. We don't live lavish lives. Like I would love to be able to not have to worry about a grocery bill and that kind of thing. But like, with 6 kids, that's probably more than some people need, especially as they get older. But,
Yeah.
I think for me, I am trying to build the business around stability to the extent that I can, which
Yeah.
is part of why I'm not going hyper growth on my ad account. I'm trying to keep the AMER at a reasonable multiple so that I can, or reasonable number so that I can, it just gets exponentially hard. The harder you have to work to make like fewer and fewer dollars per amount of work. Like you hit that marginal frontier of AMER, but it also applies on like the work involved when you're doing a lot of the work yourself. And so I would love it if Modern Fuel was the next, 5 to 10 years of my life, enjoying the shop, getting to do some fun things, teaching my kids stuff. That would be the absolute dream. And then also, I say that I would love to grow a little bit because I am, tied to the business in ways that I wouldn't
Yeah.
love to be tied to it all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to hire a full-time machinist. I felt like I needed to learn it myself in order to kind of better manage a machinist in the future.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy I did, thankful I did. Like, I think it's changed my perspective on a lot of this in terms of product design and product quality and all that. I would love to be able to hire a full-time machinist, pay my people well, which I think the people I have now, I do have a few employees. I think we're paying them very well. But, there are a few things that like, it's not always my favorite when I'm getting ready to launch a product and I'm in here on like a Thursday night at midnight, like taking pictures of the products or
Yeah.
whatever. So
Yeah.
there's some stuff I
Yeah.
would love to just outsource and be done with, which is easier at scale.
Yeah. I think it's true. One of the things I always say about lean OpEx is the idea of a low OpEx as a percentage of revenue is that it's it's really hard to do at the revenue number you're at now because you're just growing past the point where you can do everything yourself, but you don't have enough revenue to amortize many human costs yet. So it's
Yes,
just
exactly.
it's just like once you get past like 5 million, then it starts to really show up as a real thing. And you can still be disciplined about it, of course, on the way to 5 million, but yeah, it's can be tough to do at that stage. You really have to be incredibly disciplined, and I think if you're literally machining the pens yourself, it's it's there's only so much you can do to keep that lean,
It's next
Um,
next level of lean.
yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, the life you're describing is something that reminds me of like an earlier promise of what e-commerce people used to talk about. Actually, I was just talking to a friend about this the other night that uh, it reminds me a little bit of the e-commerce fuel community when you hear Andrew Darian talk about. Which shout out to them, like go join ECF e-commerce fuel if you're not a member right now. I love it. Andrew's one of my favorite people in e-commerce, but that's a closed community for e-commerce operators, 7-figure plus store owners. And Andrew, the founder of that, talks a lot about the idea of like building a life that you love, as part of, building an amazing business and incredible life. And what I mean by that is there's still, I think, in like the X world of e-commerce, everybody who gets all the attention is like 9-figure plus super monsters, which is
Mhm.
which is great. Those people, I mean, I learn a ton from them. I never want to sound disparaging about that. It's just not the path that everybody's going to go down. And there is still this idea of sort of entrepreneurship of building a business that you just described, right? Which is like your kids can be involved. You can produce some level of real comfort, even if you don't become a gazillionaire from it, like it.
Yeah.
And I think that the pathway you're describing is really compelling to me as a potential way to get there. Restrained growth, higher contribution margin per order, and scale within that. So yeah, it's compelling. It's a compelling story to me. It's exciting to me. When I think about launching my brand, it's not. It's a little different because again, I don't have to. There's no capex, but like it's not too far off the way that I'm thinking about what's possible for me. Is like I'm not trying to build the biggest thing in the whole world. I'm building something that I'd be proud of and I'm excited about, and where I like the work. Those are the things that I think are the compelling story about it. So do you have some kind of revenue number that you think like I would really feel great about getting to this? And if not, it's okay. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think like honestly, I'd feel great getting to 2 million a year. Like any
great.
like step from here, it just creates breathing room, right? And like
Yeah,
I know I'm not going to sacrifice margin to get there. Like could I hit 2 million if I really tried? I might be able to, but it's
yeah.
not going to
I
be
think you
more
could.
profitable than what I'm doing now.
Right.
And like when I'm machining them myself, that just means,
More
however
work.
much
Yeah.
percent more work. Yeah, for the same
Yeah.
amount or less dollars. And so I would love to get there. And, I hint at the work and like when you're doing this as a side gig and you got 6 kids and, I want to be a good dad. I want to be there for the kids, but also like I want to set this up to where it's something I can do full time and, at the end of the day, like I want to make really great products, and we get so much good feedback from, oh, I love that thing. And so, I don't want to, it's been a hard process to get here. Like it has been a lot of, I can work any 100 hours a week I want, um, between the two jobs and whatnot. But I think getting to 2 or really like 3 million would probably give me the layer of like, okay, I can probably step away from this and that and like
Yeah.
be a little bit more of a manager, which goes more probably into my background.
Yeah.
But then the flip
Yeah.
side of me is like just super thankful for where I'm at, because with Meta, sometimes it feels like overnight it could be gone, which
Yeah.
I don't think would happen, but it feels that way.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear more about the pathway of growth. So if it's not just turn up
Yeah.
the meta machine, if it's make sure you maintain a high AMER, a high margin per order, what what will fuel the growth? Like how do you generate higher revenue at the margin profile that you want? I have a theory in my mind immediately, but I'm curious what the way
Yeah.
you're looking at it.
So I think it's a couple things. One is that I've really leaned hard into some new creative just over the last like several weeks or whatever, which is proving to be, at least so far, quite beneficial for us. Um, and so I do think there's a pathway on the ad side to like increase the increase the volume at the same level of efficiency. And and so I think there's that. I also think there's a product pathway where we go beyond just pens and pencils. I have a product that I think we're going to be able to bring it to market in the next few months or so. I have a tendency to overestimate when I can get stuff out. It might be a year from now, but it's actually a patented. It's got a full utility patent on it, in a space that has a much larger total addressable market. And
Hmm.
I think, to the extent that our ability to market pens translates to that, not I'm not an expert marketer. Like I'm very much riding on the coattails of a lot of the infrastructure that 4X, or that 4x400 created. Um, but then again, like we have seen success with explainer, long form explainers and founder style videos. We run 100% bid caps, and so we can maintain. Well, I think it's 100% bid caps. I don't know. I actually don't pay
Yeah.
that much attention to my ad account, which is
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
not great.
Yeah.
But I think that's a pathway combination of products, and then also just and you mentioned this in an episode recently, but like continuing to tell the story of who we
Yeah.
are and what we
Yep.
do. And I think people, we have people who show up to our door. We don't actually have a retail storefront. But we have people who show up to our door because they find us, or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're like, I didn't realize you were in San Antonio. Man, I love your videos. Like,
Yeah.
and so that's always fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's about what I would think is like there's probably some ad account stuff and creative, like always at a stage of business like you're at. It's hard to produce that much of it all the time if you're a one man shop, or if you're
Yeah.
involved as many things as you are. So I get that. Um, Product releases, including higher TAM products, make sense to me. But the the idea of tell the story really well, do it with product, have moments. That feels fitting to me. Those are hard to pull off, but it feels right.
Hmm.
Do you guys have much in the way of like, is there much in your creative right now that's like, here's Matt machining a pen, like tour
Um,
the building?
yeah, a little bit, right? So we've done a handful of, that's been a lot of what our recent videos have been, is like kind of, I want to say talking head, but sometimes it's me moving around the shop or me talking to the camera as I'm walking through the shop, that kind of thing. Explainer type videos where, we'll talk through some stuff on how we do it. What makes a Swiss lathe different from a regular lathe, and, to varying degrees of success. I think that's something that, I sort of stumbled into. Like that's what was natural for me to make, and it's like, okay, let's make several of these, and they haven't done particularly well organically, but I really was making them as ads in mind, and then I post them organically, and
Hmm.
it's proven to be successful for us so far.
Cool.
I'm certainly going to pull that lever and see, how much deeper down that rabbit hole I think, or how much deeper we can go into that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
It does not. I mean, it's an interesting story with Modern Fuel, and I've always felt this way about this product, which is that like there's this, you know, you're really outside of the world of function when you're talking about why you
Hmm.
charge what you charge for the pen. The
Yeah.
pen, I mean, $100 version of a modern fuel pen is not 100 times better at writing than a $1 pen, to say nothing of a 10-cent pen. You know, that's not the
Yeah.
point. The point is that
Right.
there's a kind of craftsmanship that's pleasurable. You know, it's
Right.
much more to
Yeah,
me
exactly.
like amazing watches or something, where it's sort of like drastically over engineered relative to its function as a piece of art, essentially. Um, and that's the way I think about the product. And so there's just storytelling around that becomes so much of it, which is that for people who are interested in that kind of a story, it makes so much sense to me that this is the way you would think about, you know, um, about sort of how that works. And so finding ways to tell that story seemed to me to become critical of um, for how you sort of continue to grow interest in the brand and some of those things, you know.
Yeah. And and I don't know how much I should give away the secret or the stuff behind, but if you look at my meta ads library, like you can see what's there.
Yeah.
One of the videos we did recently was like the kind of the hook or the tagline was these pens are made the same way that luxury watches are made. And then we show, some real glamour shots of the pens being machined, close, real tight shots on the lathe, and it's stuff that like is basically communicating almost exactly what you said. So, but yeah, I'm
Yeah.
super curious to hear like what you would do if you were in this position on trying to expand that kind of, creative volume and how you get after that side of it.
Well, I mean, I was in that position, right? Because I ran the ads for that brand, and what I'll say is that I shouldn't speak too confidently here because we did run into a ceiling on it,
Yeah.
um, for sure, and it became an interesting thing where I did wonder about TAM, and I did wonder about sort of like is this the right brand for this kind of approach? But I think that for the customer for Modern Fuel, it's going to be about pulling them into the story in some way and about product releases that are interesting in some way as well. That there's got to be some
Yeah.
level of sort of showing that kind of thing. And I think it would be interesting to poke around sort of luxury watch communities and forums, and I'm sure there's some similar kind of thing for luxury pens, and see what are people saying here. You're not going to compete with the crazy expensive ones, um
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that's probably it. There's got to be some kind of influencer element to this, and in terms of finding people who lifestyle wise are the kind of people where a $300 pen makes sense. There may be something around moments in life, or $200 pen, I guess. Whatever. Um, there's got to be moments in life. I remember one of the guys who worked on the brand with me a long time ago really liked the idea that he would um, sign his escrow paperwork for buying his first house with a Modern Fuel pen as like a little marker of like,
Yeah.
this was with me at this moment, and I can give it to my kid. There's kind of an heirloom aspect of it, as like, this is the pen I used for all these big moments, you know. And
Business
so
deals, that kind of thing. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
stories like that where it's like there's something about this that's going to be with me as part of my life and part of my story in a powerful way. So probably a number of things like that. Yeah, then I think pulling people into the craftsmanship and machinery and some of that kind of stuff is all it's all part of it, I think. Yeah, but it is a different playbook than build a lander and optimize it. It's just not
Yeah.
quite there. Now there's a
Well,
messaging story that's significant, but yeah.
yeah, and to your point, like that was one of the things that when I got the brand had been tested relentlessly. Like, I think you're good friends with Dave Recook, and Dave was the one who did the transition period with me. He was I think president of 4x400 at the time. Um,
Yeah.
and he like can't say enough good things about him. Like he is
He's the
an
best.
absolute
He's the best.
genius. Oh, like
Yeah.
if he I don't know if he does paid consulting, but like if he does, man, unsolicited recommendation there, but to anybody. But
I'll put the link to his X profile at the very least in the show notes for
perfect.
this, so that people can reach out to him. So just go check that.
But like he had relentlessly tested the offer on this. Like any combination of pen and pencil and gift with purchase and discount and all of these things were like in the interest of making it work. He had gone down that path. And so that was one of the benefits I had, was like I didn't actually have to test things that much. Now, there's still a lot of ongoing testing that I probably need to be doing, and especially the further and further I get away from that on a time basis and as our products expand and that kind of thing, testing. But that was one of the things that I benefit benefited from is all those great ad landers and great website and all the assets that had been poured into it.
I'm also curious to hear you talk a little bit more about, you mentioned Dave and his help. Any other like, and you mentioned that having a couple people who work for you, they're trying to pay well. Anybody else like who have been sort of critical parts of team building at this stage of business? I think that's a hard question for people in the early seven figure range, where you're trying to find good help, but you don't have tons of money to throw around. So you got some help from Dave because he's awesome. You've got some team members. How are you trying to think about now, like getting the right kinds of help for the right kinds of things strategically? You don't have so many dollars to throw around. Like where do you go find that?
Yeah, I think I mean, quite frankly, and I listen to all your podcasts, so like I know you're a believer in this, but I think overseas talent represents a great opportunity for brands. Now, for like what we do, I can't get somebody overseas who can finish, assemble, fill orders, that kind of thing. And so it doesn't work across my whole business. But, one of my strategies, or one of my things that I did as kind of a quick win, was the packaging that we use. And, we use fairly premium packaging because if you buy a, $100 or $150 pen and it comes in like, a tube of plastic, to me, that's a little underwhelming. And so we want it to present very, very well. And before I got the brand, the box for the packaging was something like $4 a box, or maybe a little more. And there's a little bit of like COVID craziness in that, probably, in that pricing. I was able to find my own supplier to get that down to about $250. And then I actually went to your friends at Move Supply Chain, and I said, hey, I need help on this other project. And it was a completely different thing. And then I kind of threw in like, oh, and if we could look at the packaging too, like, let's just throw that in there. And this was probably a year and a half ago or so. And they went to China, they met with the factories, they got me like, 3 or 4 different samples, did a fantastic job. In the end, I think our unit price was basically cut in half again, per box. And like, you might say like, oh, from like $4 to, $1.50 or something like that. That's not much,
huge.
but like we sell thousands of pens. And so like
Right.
that's just a way to, to keep things efficient.
Only matters more the more you grow too, Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
That's great. Have you worked with anybody else? I mean, you've got Move Supply Chain, you've got what are the teammates that you have doing right now for you?
Yeah, I have one individual who is in the Philippines who's doing some customer service for me, and also some like a little bit of website management, a little bit of kind of supply chain inventory type things. And then I have 2 guys who help me. One's basically full time, the other is very much part time. They're here in the shop. They help with cleaning and finishing and assembling, and then picking and building orders and shipping them out. We do all our fulfillment in-house, partly because we have tons and tons of different SKUs, and people want specific engraving, which is a real like strength of ours, is the ability to customize. And so mostly they're doing like product assembly and fulfillment for the people I have. But yeah, it is not easy to build a team, especially when like there's not a lot of dollars to throw around. Like you can't just like hang out and do nothing. Like there's just a lot to be done. And, so yeah, it's been a challenge.
You should work with Move Supply Chain on your brand, just like Matt talked about on his. If you are looking to lower cost of goods, if you're looking to get better terms, if you're looking to source more manufacturers, approach your new product development pathway differently, lower your MOQs, all the things that make your supply chain more efficient, you should consider doing it with Move Supply Chain. Move is based in the Philippines, which has all kinds of advantages for you as a supply chain agency to your e-commerce brand. One of those advantages is that they are affordable with a team based in the Philippines, so that you, as a growing 7-figure e-commerce brand who needs supply chain support, can actually afford getting that help from your team, despite that these people have incredible resumes. It's a team full of folks who've been working on e-commerce supply chains for a whole bunch of years and can bring that expertise to your business. And that's the second reason to work with them. It's not just that they're affordable, they're really good. They know what they're looking for to help your supply chain, to make it better, to make it more efficient, more robust, and also more agile. And third, the Philippines is also a huge advantage in supply chain because it's a very quick flight to both China and Vietnam, where so many things are manufactured for e-commerce. You're talking an hour or 2, easy visa issues, all those kinds of things. So they can go show up just like Matt described in this episode for your brand and can represent your brand to different suppliers in different countries and do that without taking a 15-hour flight or whatever it is to get to one of those places from wherever you are. So go get on a call with Move Supply Chain. If you're a 7-figure e-commerce brand, your supply chain needs to get better. You need to save money there. You need to make your business more cash efficient. Go get on a call with Move Supply Chain. See if they can help you. Just see if they can help you. Really awesome service. I use them to build my brand supply chain. You should build your supply chain with them. They can help you a ton. MoveSupplyChain.com. Tell them I sent you. What have I not asked you about that you're excited about in the business, that you're feeling confident about, something that you're sort of hot on, anywhere from your perspective running the business day to day that you're most interested in right now?
Yeah, I think probably a couple things. Like I think there is still this like movement towards less but better in general for consumers. I think we've been, Temu'd and Amazoned to death for the most part of like, if you want, yes, there's a huge selection of anything you want on Amazon, and like probably a 50-50% chance that what you're getting is not what you were expecting quality wise. And so I do think like there's a trend towards that. I think that there's a trend towards non-digital things like writing notes, writing in a notebook, sending notes to people. I think there's a lot of value to that. And then I'm also excited about the actual production for us, like the ability to make these pens. It really expands kind of the scope of what is possible for me, in the sense of we can come out with new products, we can prototype very quickly, we can iterate very quickly. And then also, I've had other businesses approach me and say, "Hey, will you make these parts for me?" And like,
cool.
once you start doing that, like American manufacturing is very, very challenging. Like, yes, it costs more, but the old adage is like good, fast, or cheap, pick two. And like it feels like from what I've experienced with US manufacturing, it's like pick one and just hope you get lucky and get it. And so, the ability to like potentially, I guess what I would say is like stabilize with any excess capacity we might have from it's not like my core interest is, hey, I want to go make these parts for somebody else. But to the extent that like it provides a business that is more stable and is more predictable, like I am happy to pursue options that make me feel like I'm slightly less dependent on the Meta acquisition piece.
It's funny. I remember a long time ago, Taylor Holiday did a podcast episode with somebody who was, as part of their deal, was doing a couple $1 million a year because they were at a pretty big size or something like that, in ad sales on their email list. And it was a brand. It was like a brand who was like, had found some partners in a similar space that were non-competitive to them. And they sold placements on their email list to their audience, to other brands. And what they said about that was like, it sort of de-risked parts of their business. It basically looked at their business and said, there are assets here that we're not monetizing and that we ought to monetize. And so why not do that? And I that's a little bit of what I hear in what you're saying there, which is like, there's nothing that says you have to only sell products to your customers and whatever. If you've got a skill that you can monetize in some way and it's stable, high margin revenue for the business, go get it. Like that's
right.
I think that's good. So yeah, I love that. I think
for
it's
sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, thanks so much for taking the time. It's a very fun look into this business. I understand why you're excited about the business and why you're excited about working on it. I'm just looking behind you and seeing the room. It's just really cool. It's exciting. Let us know. Let me know when you've conquered the next mountain, then you're ready to come back and talk about how you got to 3 or 2 or 5 or whatever and did it again, because I think it's a really cool pathway.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and share. And it's fun. I love this. Like, it's super fun. I enjoy getting to do this, and just super thankful to have this.
And the pens really are beautiful. They're really incredible. I have mine. I told Matt before we started talking that I just got a new desk. If you've noticed that my camera angle has changed in recent episodes, that's why. I just got a new desk. And so my office is sort of mid-renovation, which means I put my Modern Fuel pen in a different room and don't have it on me right now. And so, yeah, can you show people a couple of them, Matt? I hear the clicking happening right there. There's the bolt action. Oh, so
there's
awesome.
Their bolt action pen.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Let me see.
While Matt's showing you those, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say like here's the bolt action fan we took. Everybody always
Yeah.
said, "Hey, it's great, but there's no clip," and so we retrofitted it to. This is a little bit of a prototype, but like we
Yeah.
retrofitted it to add a clip. We did a fountain pen Kickstarter, which was super
So cool.
fun.
Yeah.
Um, we've got our own mechanism, a side click that we developed.
Yeah.
It's a blast. I love it.
So, if you're a pen nerd or want a cool heirloom gift, that kind of thing, Matt generously offered an Andrew Ferris podcast discount. So go use the code Ferris20. That's FARIS20, like Ferris with an F, and get 20% off a Modern Fuel pen for yourself and support a member of the community who's doing really cool stuff. So, Matt, you'll have to tell me how those redemptions work and what the CAC was on your time on this episode.
Yeah, I will for sure.
Yeah. All right.
Sounds good.
Thanks so much.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye. Right when we hung up on this call, Matt was showing me some of the ads, some of the videos that he's launched recently that have like really helped explode the business. They're exactly the kinds of things we were talking about in this episode. Go to Matt's Instagram account, Modern Fuel on Instagram, and go check out some of what he's doing. It's really cool to give you another look at the process, at creative that's working, at pulling people into that story. I loved it. I think it's really awesome. Go check that out right away. Afterwards, do go get yourself a pen too. Ferris20, like I said, get 20% off that. And of course, wherever you're watching or listening to this, you should subscribe so you don't miss out. I have a whole bunch of great episodes coming up with Taylor Holidays coming very soon. I've got Shireen Aubert talking about offers, which is a subject I haven't done for a little while. Next week, I've got an episode coming out with Josh Durham about influencers that is great. Gives you every bit of information you need in less than an hour about sort of the current state of influencer marketing in D2C, including relative to your revenue level. I really loved that conversation. You're not going to want to miss it. So subscribe, like I said, wherever you're watching or listening. And of course, leave a comment on this episode. If you have a question, if you have a thought, definitely do that. Email me, podcast@ajfgrowth.com with any questions or thoughts you have. And you can go to my website at ajfgrowth.com to drop your email address there. Get my 4 free essential e-commerce resources that will get mailed straight to you. I will not spam your inbox. You can do that on the pop-up or in the footer. Both will work. And if you are interested in working with me in the AJF Growth team, fill out the intake form on my website. Tell me a little bit about your business. And even if I am not the right agency for you, I might have a great recommendation for you. So tell me a little bit about that and we'll get a conversation going. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Big thanks to More Staffing and Move Supply Chain, sort of sister agencies, sister companies, both helping you staff your growing 7-figure business. And Plus in the Philippines, a huge fan of both of those. Check the show notes for links to them. Get on some calls. Go check it out. Other than that, I will see you next time.